right.
Okay.
Welcome in, everybody. Today we are going to be discussing the matriarchy, obviously, but we're going to be doing it through history on this beautiful Beltane full moon, first of the month magical day. This is where we believe that matriarchy began through history and how it evolved and how it was slowly pushed out of the center of life. We're doing this to equip you with the knowledge that you might need, because once we know better, we can start doing better. And it is necessary if we want to get to where we are envisioning, where we want to go. So as we walk through that timeline, I want to offer you guys a different lens that what we now call matriarchy might actually have been closer to a natural order. So if you guys remember last week, we were talking a lot about how matriarchy is even considered a patriarchal term to describe it. So as we've been thinking more on that this past couple weeks, it feels more natural to even say that it's more of a natural order. So one last thing, some of what we're going to be talking about today might be very triggering for some of you. It might be words that you are not used to hearing said in certain contexts. You do not have to agree with us, but we do ask that you sit and stay open enough to hearing it. So I want to, before we jump fully in, we're going to get started with a nice deep full breath together. I'm going to have Shannon lead us on a Beltane candle lighting welcoming ceremony. So let's go ahead and do that now if you're ready.
Okay, good morning. This is one of my favorite days of the year. I don't know why. I always love this day. So I got this lovely little candle, the heart chakra candle. And I thought that maybe we could start the process of beginning each of these sessions with lighting this candle with the intention that we be guided to light the way, that we be guided to illuminate the dark places in the human story, to be present with all of the shadow aspects of all of the things that we're covering with courage and intention. So just in lighting this candle, let us all just put our hands on our hearts and call on the ancestral wisdom that is present in all of our hearts, that is present in the human story that has been lost to his story. And in gathering together, may we weave back together those lost parts. May we be present with divine truth, with Gaian truth, and with the intention of weaving together a more inclusive human story for all of us, not just human beings, but all living beings on this planet, that we can co-create together in a space of more inclusive, thriving harmony and balance. And on this day, May 1st, Beltane, honoring the union of divine masculine and divine feminine, and may all parts of the human story, from the divine masculine and the divine feminine, find that common ground to build a bridge back to a harmonious space of existence. We light this flame with intention. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
And so it is.
So it is.
All right. So we're going to circle back a little bit to some other things we talked about last time. And it's important that we do that. So when people hear women say it's time to bring back the matriarchy, what they often imagine is a reversal of the roles, right? This is what we discussed. but that's not what we're pointing to. And we made that hopefully pretty clear last week, but we're going to go a little bit further this week, because what we're pointing to is a time when life, not dominance, was at the center of everything. When societies were organized around relationship and not control. And we see a lot of that, glimpses of that being preserved in old traditions. One of them being Beltane, of course. Beltane was not about domination. It was about relationship. It was between the people and the land, right? The relationship between that. The relationship between masculine and feminine. And the relationship between individuals and communities. So what it was ultimately about in its fullest essence was keeping the balance, maintaining the balance, which is why I personally love this holiday, because it's such a good reminder of that. And it's one of the most important things. I've been saying this for years. I truly believe it's one of the most important things in this life is to find your balance. And that means in all aspects, mind, body, and spirit, right? So traditions like Beltane have been passed on. And we're going to get into a few of the, just for a minute, a couple of the symbolisms behind Beltane. So one of the major ones that we know of is fertility, right? And fertility within the dynamic of Beltane didn't just mean reproduction. It meant that your crops were going to grow. It meant that animals were going to thrive, that communities were going to expand, and that your new ideas were going to start taking root. So to honor fertility was to honor life itself, and the feminine principle was seen as essential to that, not secondary at all. So this is one example, and we're gonna go through some more, but this is just one example of how it's a language of symbolism that we've lost, I think, a lot of in our day and age today. Excuse you, Gandhi. He's a burper. Sorry. We've lost a lot of that in our day and age. And I think that a lot of our ancestors and way back then, this is mainly how they spoke. If we think about it, there wasn't a whole lot of writing and language. There could have been language barriers and things, but this is how they spoke most, was through symbolism, because you didn't need a language to understand what certain symbols meant, right? So we see hints of that in old traditions like Beltane. The other one I wanted to bring up, and I love this one because I think this one is very important to recognizing the symbolism fully, but it's the maypole. The pole represents the masculine energy. The ribbons represent the feminine energy, and the weaving represents the co-creation of the two. So this wasn't about overpowering the other. It was about weaving something together. And I think ultimately that's the toughest part that I've experienced, at least this past week, doing my thought experiments with my content. I'm trying to reach out to men. It seems like that's one of the toughest parts for men to understand, is that this is meant to be a co-creation. And so that's something I'll keep working on my content, on my end of that. But I wanted you to catch that metaphor before we continued on, because it's such a beautiful one, the maypole and how they weave those ribbons together. And again, that's a huge symbol for Beltane. So Shannon and Jules, is there anything that's coming up for you guys so far with what we had said?
That you just said that, because I got a video planned later about that same idea, and I'm going to take the route of Superman.
Okay.
To try to reach the men folk. Maybe we'll never see Superman the same way again. But yeah, I think whenever we start having these conversations that people start to feel left out because they don't know it's supposed to be a partnership, that we're not talking about we're coming in and dominating and everything. And I know that we have to say that every single time we get together and have this conversation, but I just felt like maybe let's just go ahead and say it again. We're not trying to take over the world.
Right.
We're looking for partnership.
Exactly.
Oh, hi. I sat in meditation the other day trying to just, I embody a lot of like Earth Mother, Earth magic, and this is, part of my walk. And I am also trying to be like, how can I be more inclusive with the masculine? How can I be more intentional with making this not feel restrictive, but rather inviting? And, I will go into depth in this in my own video also, but I am aware of the relationship between rock and moss, and rock being a masculine energy and moss being a feminine and soft energy, and the way that these two entities coexist in a forest ecosystem to both protect the rock from erosion and as a space for the moss to exist. And this relationship is reflected in human systems as well. And how can we look at that just in a deeper way? So but again, back to reiterating the balance. Today is a good day to embark upon inviting more balance into our systems and exploring what that looks like, not just from ancient ways, but like I very much am about integrating new ways of being, right? That's what we're here to do, is like to connect with the ancient ways and weave together new and more inclusive ways of being together. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. And I think that I think there's a healthy, again, balance between the two. I think that there needs to be somewhat of a glimpse to the past to see kind of the outline of what has worked, but then to also take another glance at the future that we want to create and how things might have shifted and changed since then to kind of adapt to what we're looking for now. So that's why today I just wanted to give a few really good examples for you guys to keep in your back pocket, or even to just think about. Maybe you've never heard this before. And I'm going to give you some good reference books as well. And if you guys have any reference books too, please let them know. But across prehistoric Europe, thousands of female figurines have been uncovered. And that's because they were the center of the cultures back then. The Venus figurines, the seated mother figures found in homes and in sacred spaces. And archaeologists didn't find weapons. I want to make that very clear. They didn't find weapons at these centers. They found women. They found fertility goddesses. They found something else much different from what we are experiencing today. And one of those examples, and I'm probably going to mispronounce this, Catalhoyuk.
I've never tried to say that word, but I know what you're talking about.
Modern day Turkey. But it's one of the oldest known settlements that we have. For an example, we see something that's even more striking there. There's no clear evidence at all for a centralized hierarchy. The homes were all built equally and side by side. The female imagery embedded into daily life and ritual was very apparent as well. So a famous figurine, for example, that they found from there shows a woman seated beside two felines. And this wasn't for some decoration. This was to show that she was powerful. She was a powerful woman. Let's see. Archaeologists like James Millart, who first excavated the site, believed that these figures pointed to a culture where the feminine held deep spiritual significance. So that's just one example. We also have the Minoan civilization, prominent goddess imagery there, priestesses depicted in ritual practices within their art. And there's, again, little evidence for dominance of war happening in these civilizations. They were not hidden in this imagery, like they were a part of it, like they were the story. The women were the story in these images. We also have the ancient Near East, the goddess, which was happening before the shift. That's talking about the goddesses like Inanna, Isis, Ashera. In many of these cultures, the divine feminine wasn't just an afterthought, it was foundational. Again, so we go back to this idea that she was there since the beginning of everything, and it became the natural order to just do that. So I wanted to real quick let you guys share if you have anything to share. But then there's one thing I wanted to share from this book as well when you're done with that. Did you guys have any thoughts so far on that? Just through history?
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but all of these civilizations that we're pointing to were pre-state, correct?
Correct.
We need to acknowledge that the shift, I think, to patriarchal thinking happened in that shift to modernity to modern times. Because we went from hunter-gatherers to agriculture, which was what, like 10 to 15,000 years ago is when we made that shift into agriculture. And with that came land ownership. And once we got to the land ownership, then people started worrying about who their heirs were, which is when the patriarchal line kind of took over and needed to control reproduction, right? They needed to know who their heirs were. So that was the shift into patriarchal structures. But prior to that, the majority of civilizations were more egalitarian, right? I mean, you definitely had some patriarchal centered ones where, the men were always the bosses, but the majority of civilization leadership was about, who was the best voice for at the time. There was no competition over leadership. It was much more egalitarian. So the state is what got us here.
Right. Shannon?
I hadn't really thought of a book list ahead of time, but the book that always comes to mind is the Women Who Run with Wolves by Clarissa Pinkola Estes. And again, to just parallel with the natural world, in natural systems, there are no patriarchal societies. There are only equal, balanced, and or matriarchal. But there are no patriarchal societies in the natural world. So that in and of itself shows that when the dominance is what shows up in a natural system, that species gets wiped out. And, we need to always reflect on the natural systems because those are the ones that are keeping balance, whereas we actively go against balance. So when we're looking to building new systems, observing mammal cultures is very helpful in that respect.
Yeah. And there's so many of them too, right? So many.
Yeah, there is, I cannot think of the ecologist off the top of my head. So, we have this idea of like wolves as being a patriarchal society, but that's not the case. And there's also like this false rumor that the alpha is the dominant, and it is much more of a tribal. And in observing wolf cultures, they are very respective of each other's land. They don't hunt within territory. Like you can look at wolf packs and see very clear territory lines. And, those kind of observations, I think, and distinctions of the things that have been stereotypically, you have people like Andrew Tate who will use the alpha male model, but that's a false like scientific reference. So it pisses me off when men connect to that because it's not an understanding of the deep respect of boundary and order within that system.
Yeah.
Well, and I think what's so interesting about the wolf thing is the ecologist that originally said this is like the alpha wolf, the alpha male, said that he was observing wolves in captivity
Yes.
when he originally came up with that. And then he went out into the wild and observed wolves in their natural state and went, oh my God, I got it all wrong. And then spent the rest of his life trying to say, this was wrong, but it's so all of these alpha male guys that are basing their personality around that are basing it off of wolves in captivity. Wolves in distress.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I don't know how to get me back. Here we go. Okay. Yeah, and that's a huge like thought test to do with yourself, right? What did I call it? A thought experiment. Like just take, because I was thinking about this too the other day, right? Because I don't know if you guys saw it. There was a video that went viral of a mama lioness. Her baby cub falls into a water, and the male lion comes up and tries to actively stop her from pulling the baby out, and she just flips her shit on him and is like, no, bye, get out of here. And then she continues to finish rescuing her cub. And it got my brain thinking about it, because these are animals in captivity, right? So not that this has anything to do with our conversation, it's kind of like a bunny trail here, but it really made me think about how much of this behavior is learned. And in men, I know for a fact it is 100% of it is learned behavior, but it made me really think about it in the animal world as well. Because these are animals that are in captivity. Did the male lion learn these behaviors because of ways that he was rewarded for acting one way or not? You know what I mean? It's just so fascinating to me, because it really does tie it all back home to these are learned behaviors. You weren't born hating women. You weren't born hating men. We were conditioned to believe this about each other. We were conditioned to think all men are this way or all women are that way. And then it just becomes this thing that it is now. So again, why we like to create this space. This book here is amazing. It's called The Sacred Hoop, Recovering the Feminine in American Indian Traditions. And she breaks it down in such a beautiful way that I really wanted to just share it with you guys about how exactly it happens. So she's speaking from an indigenous perspective, and she's saying basically, this is how you strip the matriarchy from its power and replace it with a patriarchy, at least the way that it's been historically done through the indigenous populations. Affecting the social transformation from egalitarian systems to hierarchical patriarchal systems requires meeting 4 objectives. The first is accomplished when the primacy of female as creator is displaced and replaced by male gendered creators. She gives some examples here of how they did that within her own culture. The second objective is achieved when tribal governing institutions and the philosophies that are their foundation are destroyed, as they were among the Iroquois and the Cherokee, to mention just 2. The third objective is accomplished when the people are pushed off their lands, deprived of their economic livelihood, and forced to curtail or end altogether pursuits on which their ritual system, philosophy, and sustenance depend. The fourth objective requires that the clan structure be replaced, in fact, if not in theory, by the nuclear family. And I love that she broke it down that way, because it's so true, not just for what they've done to the indigenous populations, but what's also happening in other cultures, but also through this patriarchy, matriarchy dynamic that we're looking at here. Because that's how I truly see what happened in our past. If you're not aware, most of the matriarchy, I'm using that word obviously interchangeably here, but what we're seeing is that they were living peacefully for a long time before the patriarchy, in whatever form that it took at that time. A lot of it was religious, right? Through the Catholic Church wanting to really put their power and their stamp on the world. So because of that, because of the way that I'm going to say it took advantage. They took a huge advantage that they should not have taken against somebody, a culture, a society, a spirit, a power, a principality that was keeping peace over the land. And ever since that shift is where we've really started to see everything else start to trickle out right from there. But I say all this to say that this is not something to be what's the word? Depressed about. This isn't something to be upset about or fearful of or anything like that. Because to get back to the original point, this is the natural order. It's the natural order. And anytime we see within history, within climate, within anything, anytime anything goes against the natural order, chaos ensues. There's a reason for that. The natural order is holding things in place. And as we said a couple weeks back, it's about everyone showing up and doing the job they were created to do. And all of our jobs do not look the same. That's why it's a beautiful thing. Because I can't do what you do, but you can't do what I do either. And only certain people can receive it from someone who says it or does it the way I do versus the way that you do. And all of it is valid. All of it is beneficial. Do you have any comments, you guys, on that?
It reminded me of this quote and it's from a Native American tribe, and I apologize, I can't remember which one it came from, but I've always clung to it when it came to male-female relationships. And they said that a woman's work is to bring mankind back to source, and man's work is to protect woman so she is free to do this work unhindered.
Yeah.
And I feel like those are the roles that we're trying so desperately to get back to. All of the frustration that I see from women across apps, if you boil it down to one thing, is it's that we feel unprotected.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and to build on that, in systems that operate effectively and in states of thriving, everyone is obviously doing their purpose and the gifts and skills that they've been given. But, in the patriarchal model, oftentimes men who have creative or deeply emotional skill sets, there's no place for them. Mm-hmm. And so they have to revert into other things to make a paycheck, right? And they touch upon this in the book Reviving Ophelia, the distinction that happens when we hit about age 10 in being able to establish our sense of autonomy. If you are a creatively gifted boy, in our culture, you are shamed and shunned for that. So men who are creatively gifted and are able to find a skill set and thrive within this culture are going against the current rather than with it. Mm-hmm. So in that protected model where the men are protectors and providers, like that, part of that entails protecting one's own skill set, protecting one's own heart, protecting one's own spiritual path. And that can only be done from a place of wanting to strive for harmony and balance. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, and it's tough too because, as some of you probably know, I did an experiment this week with my content, and I learned a lot from it. I really did, because the whole purpose, and I want to explain this to those of you who've stuck in there with me this whole time, but the whole purpose of what I'm trying to do with my content right now is to get men to think. It tends to come a little easier, I've found, for them when there seems to be a buffer between you and them. which is why the characters started coming out, right? I wanted them to feel safe enough to listen to what I was trying to say. And although I got a ton of men proving my points, I also got a ton of men who were very, oh man, my words are just like not with me today. Men who were very vulnerable. They were allowing themselves to be vulnerable enough to say, you know what, you're right. I have done that. And thank you for pointing it out. I should think about that a little more, or whatever. And that's literally all women want from you. That's all we really want from you, is to know that you're listening, that you're internalizing it, you're making it, you are making it your problem in the best way, not in the bad ways of thinking we're talking about you when we're not. We're talking about the general experience of being a woman in this world. And when you're able to take yourself out of that position of thinking it's all about you and actually listening to what the other person, in this case, a woman, is trying to share with you, that is opening that heart portal to have this balance returned on this planet again. It's only when you're constantly in that defense mode that the energy is conflicting against itself the whole time. So when it's funny because when we're trying to get you to understand this, it's so funny to be called emotional when in reality what we're doing is very cut and dry, right? There's no emotion behind it. It's literally an A, B, C equals D. I'm trying to lead you to B so we can get to C so we can equal D, right? Methodical. There's not actually any emotion behind it, but there's always these defensive mechanisms, these triggers that will, what I call it, is causing your autopilot subconscious to kick in and either start projecting or deflecting on the person who's trying to communicate with you. So all this to say, and yes, we will get to the women, by the way, that's a whole other conversation, but it's not one of those that we want to mix. So right now I've been talking to the men. I'm going to continue to talk to the men until I feel like it's gotten a good point. And then the women will be addressed, right? It's not all men. We know that. We know that. But you have to be able to sit in the space right now, because right now it's your turn to sit in this space. Soon it will be the women's turn to sit in that space. And I guarantee you, we will be able to do it. We will. We're just asking that you do that first right now. We say first because of the fact that it wasn't women who created a rape academy. The men need to be addressed right now. It's not the women. So I wanted to just make that clear, make that announcement. But the bunny trails, sorry, I know this is like what the people really want to hear. But the bunny trails are important, I think, in this conversation because it all ties in together, right? Again, we get back to the Beltane conversation that this has been going on for centuries. Our ancestors knew this for centuries. It's just that our culture, our society right now has been conditioned in such a way that what is natural order no longer feels natural. And that is alarming to me. It's alarming. That means it's gone too far, which again is why I think these conversations are really important. If you guys are ready, we could start calling some people in for questions or comments, or do you guys have anything you'd like to share there?
I just wanted to say I could see you wading through that system, even in that little rant of being called emotional. Where did that come from?
Right.
It all ties back to the same thing. Why did emotional become a bad thing? We're all emotional.
Right.
We're all emotional.
We're all supposed to be.
We're human beings.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know I think I said this in one of our previous lives, but I just want to reiterate that, we are stuck in our structures of familiarity and comfort, both from a place of not knowing how to move forward from here. And, all of what is familiar becomes comfortable to the point that it leads us to states of stagnation. So as we try on new roles, as we explore new ways of thinking, being, and doing, that's like putting on a new pair of shoes. It's going to give us blisters.
Mhm.
And I use the concept of like spiritual blisters. We don't take off the shoes and throw them away just because they're brand new. We break them in.
Mhm.
So we're in a process of like breaking in these concepts and ideas, and that's going to be uncomfortable for a bit. But it's through the determination of saying, oh, no, we need these new ways of being, that we get past those hurdles. So this is where we need to like encourage each other to lean into the discomfort
Mhm.
with the intention that we need to get past the breaking in point of these new thoughts and structures.
Yeah, I agree. Hi, Ryan. Welcome.
Hello.
Hello. There you go.
How's it going?
Great. I love this conversation. This is wonderful. I'm so happy that you're having this right now. It is so needed in this society. For those of you that don't know, I work with a lot of at-risk youth, and it's a boys group. And so having this understanding is so foreign to a lot of them. And I wish so much that they could be on platforms like this and be exposed to this kind of dialogue. It is so important. So just from my heart, like, thank you for holding that.
Yeah, absolutely. That was kind of the whole reason behind it is we just got to start somewhere, right? Like we just have to start. We may not know how to get there fully just yet, but at least we do know the next 3 steps ahead of us. And if enough people like us are vocal about, hey, here's the next step ahead of us, let's all do it together. I really truly believe that that's where the power is. So as a side note, if you want to, all of these replays are then posted on my YouTube after they go live. So there's always copies there if you ever want it to like share to people, but that's definitely an option. Thank you. Did you have a question for us, or it's a certain like topic you wanted to talk about, or?
Yeah, again, with working with youth and this next generation of young men that have all of these echo chambers of Andrew Tate-ness, just inundated in their world, and they're creating these relationships with these people on these screens that they really they don't have as much in common as they think.
Mm-hmm.
It's fascinating to hear their perspectives on how women should be treated. Maybe even some of their experiences that they've had with women that might feel unsafe. And so I'm curious what a women's wolf pack, a council like this, might have to offer a young man in that state.
Yeah, I think Shannon, you're a great person to answer this one. She's got a son.
Okay.
Go ahead for it.
Yes, I have a 17-year-old son, and I have 3 younger brothers. I was raised by a very loving stepfather and father, so I have a very compassionate perspective as it relates to the masculine. I think that in the same way that we were just talking about the dynamic of it's the masculine's role on a DNA coded level to protect and provide, and then the women nourish and nurture. The flip side of that being that in our culture today, as women feel objectively unsafe, especially as it relates to the Rape Academy thing and any other dynamics in our culture, we have to recognize that men do not objectively feel vulnerably safe. And this again goes back to what I was just saying a little bit ago. At age 10, if there is not a space for that boy to explore his creative, emotional, spiritual curiosities in a way that feels safe, they reject that part of themselves. And so I think, to answer your question there, in a matriarchal society, and this is part of the work that I do as a whole too, is holding space for that to be safely explored. Holding space for masculine vulnerability. Holding space for the emotional body that cannot be explored because the hypersexualization doesn't allow for that vulnerability to emerge. So we need to create systems and ways of being, of doing that, you know, in my own practices and ways of being, I think men's circles are going to start emerging more. Mm-hmm. And in that space, I have shown up as maybe like in the first session to initiate the opening of the heart and saying from the sacred feminine, I'm sorry for the ways in which you have been harmed by toxic femininity, by expectations that you be hypersexualized in a body that maybe wanted to be softer and slower and gentler, by not being able to be present in your own creative brilliance because you have been bound to these systems of expectation. So someone else on here asked that they didn't understand how they as a man could exist in a matriarchal society. That's how. Is being able to stand in the fullness of who you are without the expectation to be, you know, ruggedly strong and, you know, hyper masculinized, and all of those paradigms of expectation that we've placed upon boys right from like the get-go. And so I think in that shift of honoring, again, back to the harmony and balance, it's really stripping away all of the expectations of who you're supposed to be as a man and creating a safe space for whoever that is to emerge. Mm-hmm. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, you speak to the heart of who I am as a protector, right? That's the piece that I think we lose in this structure.
Oh,
yeah,
come back
in some way.
We lost you for a second. The screen paused.
Yeah, my phone's dying.
Okay.
You guys are so powerful. You're just sucking all the energy.
It happens. It happens. No, I agree. And I think that we have to really grasp that. It's so important because we have like a doctor, right? They look for, you come in there and you say you're sick. They look for symptoms. Well, what symptoms do you have? Well, this is happening, this is happening, this is happening. Well, that creates a streamline to the problem, right? That's how they're able to identify this is the problem. You've got whatever, fill in the blank. The same is true on a spiritual basis, right? As above, so below, as within, so without. The same is happening spiritually. So if we can find those veins, we can lead them back to what the actual issue is and start addressing that right away. I think that that's going to be the most important key aspect to this, is getting to the root. Because right now, the roots are so deep that no matter how much you chop that grass, it's going to keep growing back because those roots are still there. But even speaking as someone who works with children, right, or works with young men, that's your challenge, is figuring out, how can I do that? How can I get to that root in a way that they feel safe enough to share that with me, right? And that's a challenge for you, I understand, as a man, but it's also a really beautiful place to be, I think, for you specifically, because that's where you've put your passions. That's where you've put your desire to help, is helping the youth, the young men. So for me, the challenges are fun. It's nice. A good example for me is my challenge was this past week. How can I get this message across in a way that, heaven forbid someone's going to get offended, or at least not as many people are offended, but they're still listening. And that was my challenge. That was fun for me. So I think it's really about shifting that perspective, right? It's not like, oh, what do I have to do to fix this? It's, what do I get to do to change this world? How do I get to show up? And I think it's all in that mindset shift, honestly. Because again, where your thoughts go, your energy flows, right? And if your thoughts are constantly like, nothing's changing, I'm not getting through to anybody, I can't help anyone, well, then you're right. You can't, and that you won't. But if you start to believe that you can and that you will, then you actually will. People will be there ready, because when the teacher is ready, the students appear, right?
Right. Right. Yeah, and just in speaking to this, the understanding of being rugged and vulnerability, it seems like we seem to be balancing with each of those as, what if they can both be true? What if we can hold both of those truths? If we have men that we can trust to be vulnerable with,
Yep.
that are also rugged.
Yep.
And it's like, yeah, no, I hear you. Like, the narrative of hanging out with men is that we talk about sports and rugged things, right? But maybe there's space there for some conversations that might feel a little bit uncomfortable, that might require us to be maybe a little more vulnerable. And that's the opportunity that I have with this younger generation, is to sit with them and to emotionally prime them to because we don't offer advice. That's not what we do. We share our experience. We tell our truth. We tell our story. We let go of attachments to the outcome, and we heal. And when we can model that to this next generation, then we don't have to have the heaviness, the weight of the understanding, the responsibility of being a protector that's rugged, right? I can be strong. I can be powerful. I can display that message to you in a loving way as well. You can hold both truths. It's a dance.
Yeah. One of my favorite quotes actually talks about, it's better to be a gardener at peace than to be a warrior in a garden, or something along those lines. I totally
Better
just
to be
screwed
a
up.
warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war.
That's it. And it goes back to that whole concept of being the meek, right? The meek shall inherit the earth. What that's actually talking about is knowing how to use a sword, but just choosing and knowing when is the right time to use it. So yes, be deadly, be a force to be reckoned with. Just know how and when you're supposed to be using that energy, right? Speaking to a man, the same is true for women as well, especially right now. We've discussed this a little bit here and there throughout these past few weeks, but a woman's rage is so powerful that we really need to be careful with how we're doing it. Again, I'll use myself as an example, but it's about alchemizing that anger, that rage, into something productive, which again is what I was doing this past week with my content as the example. I have every right, and I could have, and thankfully I've been doing this for a long time, so I don't do that anymore. But I used to get really upset when I would get these like bot comments that I know were so untrue about me, but it made me have a thicker skin to where now I'm finally in this place where this past week is like, water off a duck's back. It doesn't matter to me, because I know that the message is more important. I know that the delivery of it is important, and those who don't get it, I don't worry about that. I worry more about the ones who are getting it, to make sure that they're feeling the nurturing that they need. They're feeling safe. When those naysayers, haters, whatever, get in the comments, what I've experienced and what I love to see is more and more women, and even more and more men now, thank you very much, starting to comment back to those haters and whatever, defending the post, defending the message, or even defending me, because some of them are just like so adolescent, Ryan. I just don't understand it sometimes. It's like an instant projection attack on a person because you didn't like what they said. And it shows me where the fractures are, right? Like where we still have a little more work to do. So I appreciate you sharing that, Ryan. If anyone else would like to hop in, we've got probably about 9 more minutes. If you wanted to ask a question or share a comment, you could do that.
I just wanted to say one more thing in addressing Ryan, since you're working with young men. I'm a woman who was emotionally and intellectually raised to be a man because my family didn't know what to do with a girl when I came along. So I relate so much to that younger experience, and then later in my life having to deconstruct from that because I was so ingrained with it. And so I know the experience of having your emotions denied. I know the experience of being told you can't cry, you can't be afraid, you can't be angry, all of those things. Boys are taught to be very reined in and basically not have any emotions but performance, right? The performance of masculinity. And what I found, like, I have a little brother that's 10 years younger than me, and I went back and sort of would start picking him up in difficult situations and just asking him how he felt. Boys don't get asked how they feel very often, and not for no other agenda than just to know. Like, it seems like when boys do get asked about their feelings, it's somebody's trying to figure them out. What's wrong with you? What's how do you feel? And then giving them the space to express that and just that. No critique, no, just to be with their feelings. And I think we don't nurture the emotional side of young boys enough.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the gift of the matriarchal society, right? Women that are curious and open to these kind of conversations. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. All right. Thank you, Ryan. We appreciate you coming and sharing with us.
Yeah. So much love.
Thanks for being here.
Can I add to that? What Jules just said. I was also commenting back and forth with someone in the comment section here, but I also work with. I'm a therapist, so I have several clients who are male. Most of them are young boys, but I do have some teenagers as well. And as I said before, I have a 17-year-old son. I often use the reference of Bruce Lee when I am trying to create a relatable male figure for them to be aiming towards. Because as strong and accomplished as he became as a martial artist, he was emotionally intelligent on a level that transcended his generation.
Mm-hmm.
And the objective and what he used often as a reference is to be like water. Water is not reactive, it is adaptive.
Mm-hmm.
Water has constantly moving forms depending upon what is in water's path. If it's too cold, water becomes ice. When it's too hot, water adapts and steams. And so you have the liquid, the solid, and the vapor. And then, so again, when we're talking about men being soft, it's not about being soft in a way that means you're weak. It's about being soft in that you are not reactive, you're adaptive.
Mm-hmm.
And you can objectively look at what is happening in a conversation that you're having with another human being, in a problem that is happening in your community. And rather than react, you look at all of the parameters objectively and adapt accordingly. Water will always find the path of least resistance. So the softness is finding the path of least resistance without resorting to violence, but rather creating a flow state into a more efficient way of being, right? So it's about efficiency and flowing rather than dominating. That's what masculine softness is. And so I just want to make sure that that's clear when we are talking about that. We're not asking men to go into a space of weakness. We're asking you to rise up into your most objectively grounded and observant way of being so that you're not responding from emotional dysregulation, but from such a heightened sense of presence and observation that you can respond rather than react. And this is, we see this in the masculine dominating systems of our political system. That's reactive. That's not responsive, and it's not adaptive. So that's much more what we're asking to be in an awareness state of, is the potential that from a place of emotional regulation, your strength becomes soft and adaptive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love that you said that. I love that you brought that up, because it's perfect analogy of what's going on. You explained that perfectly. Because that's it, right? Like if you think about the water and a huge stone and a stream, right? Over years and years and years, that stone can get dwindled down to nothing just because of the persistence, the gentle persistence of the current of the stream, right? And that's what I really believe she's getting at. I believe that that's what, I mean, it perfectly just describes the energy that I come from when I'm making my content, when I'm trying to talk to men about this, or women, or whoever. That's the energy. For me, it's also adding in that fox medicine, the coyote medicine, the trickster, but in a good way. And that's something else that we've got to talk about is there hasn't been enough room for the nuance that needs to exist in this area to exist. And so hopefully it's going to be allowed to do that now. Now that more and more women are speaking up, creating a space, demanding a space, honestly, for it to be held. I think that's what we're going to start seeing more of now is just more of that creative. I brought this up a couple times. We talked about it last time too, but for those of you who are maybe not sure what I mean by the fox medicine, the fox and the coyote are both animals that are recognized as being the tricksters, because they have a specific energy to them that really knows how to be clever, how to work and maneuver through things that are essentially set out to get them, right? Like in natural life, in the real world, let's say, a predator is trying to come after the fox. Well, the fox knows how to dodge and hide and stay quiet and do what it needs to do to stay alive. Well, I truly believe that the fox has been one of the main spirit guides for the collective of women for decades, especially during times like the 50s, the 60s and 70s, when it was even harder to be a woman back then than it is today. And thank God for the women who have fought so hard for us to be where we are now. I wanted to end this live, I guess, today to just remind you that it's on us now. It's the women of these generations now to stand up, to be loud about it, to be the ones who are going to make others uncomfortable, because we're not doing this anymore. I'm pretty sure the women have taken the general consensus, the temperature of the culture, and realized we already know what's best for men. So either get on board or sit down, but you've got to let us do what we're doing, because it's gone far enough. It's gone far enough. Women are not feeling safe to even live in their own homes anymore. So it's time. It's time that these discussions are being had. It's time that something is done about it. So Shannon, if you are ready, we could probably go ahead and do our closing ceremony.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Ooh, we burned down quite a bit of our candle here.
All right.
Okay. So for those of you who are still here with us, if you just want to put your hand on your heart, I'm just going to close my eyes, but you do whatever feels available to you. Just taking a breath and connecting to everything that we spoke about here, connecting to the places within your own body where you are embodying the masculine and the feminine. We are all equal parts of both. The parts in your own human story where you are present with the shadow and the light of your masculine and feminine, and may those parts weave together in a more efficient and effective union for all beings in all walks of life across the human story as a whole. Thank you to everyone who gathered here today, and may we continue to embody the light, to shine light on dark places, to remain curious and adaptive, and to be like water and continue to flow and just be present with all that's unfolding at this time. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to everybody who checked in with us today. It's greatly appreciated. Hold on, I've got this puzzle piece thing I gotta do here. There we go. Okay. Anyway, appreciate it, everybody. Thank you so much for being here today. We look forward to meeting with you again in 2 more weeks. So not next Friday, but the Friday following. We do this every other Friday. The replays are available on my YouTube, which is the same screen name at Mojave and Wolf. And if you ever have any questions, or if you want to pipe in the next time that we have one of these, we welcome anyone who wants to have that conversation with us at the end of every live. So please come prepared with some questions next week. We'll be happy to talk to you about it then. All right. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Did I do so good?
You did so good.